This is the Sourcing Brief, where we share the best moments of Flow at the Source. Susan, what makes this work exciting?
Well, I would say my training and my background is in engineering and problem solving. And that's where I really enjoy what I do is coming into a place where people want to make improvement, they want to change, but they don't necessarily know how. Maybe they've been dealing with problems for a very long time and they're frustrated. Maybe they've given up because they've tried so many times to address something, but either they weren't listened to or they didn't have the right tools to make improvements stick. I really love coming into those kind of environments where the leadership is invested and interested, and they know the way to get the best solution is to empower their people, teach them how to drive improvement. And whether it's in healthcare, telecommunications, manufacturing, government, all these different organizational types of environments, this a problem solving approach that's based on using data, it works. And when you focus it like a laser beam in the right area, it has impact that customers feel, that employees feel, that leaders feel, sometimes that the whole community feels. And for me, that's very rewarding to be part of that.
Susan, the director of a busy clinic calls. Where do you start?
And so that means they want to address it. And they understand that they may need some outside help to start, but that eventually the goal would be to get their own people to come up with the solutions that are really going to work. An approach that we found to be successful is to let people who are from outside the organization come in and do what we call go to Gemba. Watch the flow. Sit in the middle of the clinic. See what patients experience as they go through the process. Talk to employees about what their pain points are. What do they find frustrating about their day? Where do they waste time doing things that are non-value adding or repeating steps that were done previously? And take some data. How long does it take each step as you're watching it? And with your own eyes, we call it go to Gemba. Observe what's happening in that clinic, where the value is happening. Once you do that baseline assessment, it doesn't necessarily take that long. Then you meet with the team and share your observations and see what resonates with them. Often they they'll see the same things that we see. The difference might be in the priorities. It might be that from observation, we would say address XYZ first, second, third. And they might say through our experience, we would rather address, ABC. In those cases, you always have to listen to the team because where they have energy to apply the improvement, generally that's where I would go, unless they're trying to work on something that from your perspective, having seen the process operate, is a very low value. But in our experience, that never happens because the people who are doing the process every day, they know where the problems are. And you have to trust their gut, their instinct, their initiative and drive that the priorities that they think are most important to drive improvement are the right ones, because that's where they're going to have the energy. Even if you as a practitioner might see something a little different, maybe they'll get to that eventually. But I like to start with the baseline assessment, gathering the pain points from the team, allowing them to tell you what they think the priorities are that they would address, and then following that up with helping them figure out how to improve.
What helps you decide what tools to deploy and how to deploy them, depending on the team's culture?
There are times where tools that we as practitioners use all the time, like a value stream map or maybe some statistical analysis, can really help the team to understand their operation. And it really depends on the culture that you're working in. If you have a culture of people that are new to process improvement, like often in healthcare, in the environments that we've been in, then sometimes you have to do that for them. And you do the analysis, you use the tool and share the results with them, let them see that, and then they can start using it. You really have to pace your teaching, your instruction, your coaching based on the culture. If you try to give them too much at once, they may or may not be successful with it, and then they give up. And you definitely don't want that. So to me, it's very important that you observe the culture and you provide to the team, I'll call it just in time information and tools that meet them where they are, rather than starting with the most advanced kind of tools that they could be using.
How do ideas become action?
I like having the team start by testing their ideas. We call them trial experiments. So maybe they run the process a little differently for a shift or a couple of hours, and they take some data about what's working, what's not. They get people's feedback through surveys, through just talking to people. How is this working? And you see from that trial experiment what part of our solution is going to be something worth pursuing, what part are people not accepting or needs to be tweaked. Then we would go into a pilot, which is a little bit more formalized, where you design this is how the process is going to run, this is how we're going to take sample data, this is how long we're going to run the process for. And you let that run for, maybe a couple of weeks, depending upon the environment. You encourage the team to get data. They're running the pilot, they're doing the tasks, not we as the consultant team. We're just trying to work with them to understand their data and what the data is telling them about how well the pilot is running. As an example, I recommend that they have a checkpoint every day. I can't always get teams to do that because it takes time. But usually if you do a 15-minute checkpoint and you document what you're learning, by the end of the pilot, you'll know, all right, here's what we need to do as we transition this into everyday operations. And then I also recommend they do a formal pilot review. And through that, they'll evaluate for themselves what is working about it and how they would need to adjust it to continue. And then that leads right into a more permanent implementation and a control plan. And this whole entire time, I really think the team has to own the results, the process, the evaluation. So I can advise them as much as I want on the type of data they should select, I don't generally tell them who should be doing what, but an action plan and following up on that. But it's up to them to own it and make sure they continue to follow up and adjust as is needed. And that's why I go back to my earlier point, which is if they're going to work on an improvement project, if a team is going to work on an improvement project, it is important that it be something that'll have big impact. But it's as equally important, is it something they really want to work on? Do they believe this is what should be their focus for right now?
What helps spot people's potential early on?
I would say this is probably my favorite part of my job is working with people to see something in them that they might not see themselves just yet. So you have to pay attention to how is this person in their environment? Do other people listen to them? Are they influential? Is this person motivated to do something different than what they've been doing in the past? Where are their interests? And I really enjoy, often you think somebody sees in themselves what you do, but I enjoy sharing with them and discussing where are you interested? What do you want to do? Because you'll find that people don't always have that in their head that they can go to the next level. I'll give you an example. I was with my son and his fraternity brothers, and one of the fraternity brothers plans all of their vacations and he plans all of their parties. And I always say to my son, is this young man going? Because if he is, I know there's going to be a plan. You're going to get there safely. And so I talked to this young man about, hey, have you ever considered being a project manager? And just used my knowledge to help him see, here's the path to become a certified project manager. And the reason I did that is I just saw this interest that he had, the capability that he had, the organizational skills that he had. And it was a logical next step for me to say, why don't you consider this next? And I do the same thing with my clients. If I see somebody that we have some providers we're working with in healthcare that love using Excel. love getting data and showing how their process improvement is impacting their cycle time and their customers. If you see they already have that interest, it's a logical next conclusion to say, hey, have you ever thought about becoming black belt trained or taking more of the leadership for this type of work in your clinic? And I'm always surprised how people don't see that in themselves. But when you say it to them, they're like, yeah, I have been interested in this. And then you can have a conversation about what that would look like.
What gives you the confidence that the improvements and the gains will hold?
When we walk away, are they going to be able to keep this momentum going? I think the leadership is extremely important. And I like to look at cross-functional leadership at the highest level of the organization. Do you have one person that's really interested in sustaining this? Or do you have most of the top level of the organization that is committed to this? Because if it's only one person, it will not be sustained because the other leaders will find other things that are more important. So that's number one. Number two, the culture of the organization. Do they empower people at the front line and everybody in between them and the CEO to come up with ideas, implement their ideas, learn from their ideas, and do they teach people how to do problem solving? If they do, that's a culture that will be able to sustain it. If they do not, and they're constantly moving from one priority to the next, it's going to be very difficult for them to sustain. So I would say number one, cross-functional support at the highest level of the leadership team. And number two, a culture that promotes learning, empowers people, and really wants to drive long-term improvement, which may not be achievable in a 2-week sprint.